This then is the Ferrari 488 Pista, and we are going to do three things with it. First of all, we're going to take it onto the racetrack where it belongs. Then we're going to do a science bit. And finally, we're going to find out what it is like as a road car. And if you like it, why don't you hit subscribe now?
Hello, you join me inside one of those cars they do not tend to get wrong. If somebody said, name two cars that they just get right every time. Porsche 911 GT3 RS and the faster version of the mid-engined V8 Ferrari. This is it, the 488 Pista. Comes on the back of the 458 Speciale, which followed the 430 Scuderia, which followed the Challenge Stradale. And unlike some of Ferrari's special models, this, a bit like a GT3 RS, goes into the standard production cycle. So strictly speaking, it's not limited in numbers, except by the number of people who want this and the standard car by the time it goes out of production. Right, headline figures quickly. 90 kilos less with the right options, 50 horsepower more. Still meant to be fun and easy and approachable to drive. 488 GTB has a particularly docile nature at the limit for a mid-engined V8 sports car. They want this to have the same. I don't know if you can sort of feel or hear what's happening on downshifts, but to make it feel more racy, there's a real kick as you downshift. Steering is the same, ride height is the same as a 488 GTB. Springs are a bit stiffer, roll bars are unchanged. Basically everything's turned up by 20% except the approachability. That's the idea. And there are also some new electronics, which I will explain more in detail in a minute. But they pertain to how easy this car is to slide around, basically. Ridiculously easy is the short answer. GTB already is. This one, say Ferrari's people, is supposed to be a car you can just use on track consistently. His behaviour doesn't fall off too much. So it revs to 8 as usual. The engine is really strong. 3.9 litre V8 with 2 turbos. It's going to be, isn't it? And the fact is that, unlike Ferraris of old, which would only rev and rev, and this still revs, that because it gives you that much torque, it gives you chassis adjustability much lower down in the rev range. Steering is light, quick. I've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. It's not sort of loaded with heavy feel and feedback like a GT3 RS, but you can feel what's going on. It helps that you sit right in the middle and it feels like it's pivoting right around you. It rotates nicely as you brake or turn it. Nice and adjustable on exit. I've got it up to CT off at the minute, which is traction control off, but there is a side slip control going on, which allows the tail to be pushed wide. It's just extraordinary. I should probably just slightly explain the way these work. I've literally got in this car when that video camera started running, and then 3 laps later you're in a car that will let you do this up to the limit of that side slip control. It's good. It's really good.
And so to the nit and grit of the 488 Pista, a car with more motorsport in it than any other road-going Ferrari, says the company. The weight is down by as much, if you spec the right options, as 90 kilograms. The bonnet, front bumper, rear spoiler, intake plenum and more are carbon fibre, and the wheels can be too, if you're prepared to part with more than £10,000 for them. This is all coupled to the most powerful V8 engine the company has ever put in a road car. It's 50 horsepower more powerful than the regular 488 GTBs, because despite still being a 3.9 litre twin turbocharged flat plane crank V8, more than half of the engine's internals have been changed. The flywheel, the conrods, the crankshaft, all of these are different because this is basically the Ferrari Challenge engine. All in, 18 kilograms has come out of the engine alone. And there's more. Ferrari says the response time is quicker than any other turbocharged engine. Torque is reduced at low revs in lower gears so that it feels more naturally aspirated, and it now makes power all the way to the rev limiter rather than sort of easing off into a soft limiter as it did beforehand. All of this, though, would be nothing without some newfangled aerodynamics, which look, well, to me, more like the Ford GT than they have before. And this has a frontal S-duct and a longer, higher wing at the back, a bit like the Ford GT does. A change in the angle of the radiator at the front means that air that passes across it runs out of the bodywork lower down than it did before, and that means that air going across the top of the body is cool rather than warm. So although the intercoolers are bigger, they don't have to be quite so big to be more efficient. All in, downforce is up by 20% to 240 kilograms at 124 miles an hour, while drag is only increased by 2%. And finally, there's the chassis, which has new sticky tyres from Michelin and only 10% stiffer dampers, no changes to the anti-roll bars and steering, so the real difference comes in the way that all of the electronics hang this together. We're now onto the 6th generation of Ferrari's side slip control, which allows the car to be slid on corner exit without you falling off, basically. The latest generation hooks together hardware like the E-differential with software like the stability control, the idea being that the car falls into a slide more predictably and progressively than it did before, which means you don't have to work at the wheel so much. All of which makes the Pista sensational on the circuit, and so to the road.
It's a good road. This lots of hairpins. It's not the widest road in the world, and that is, I think, a good thing because, let's face it, cars are wide these days, and roads like this are typical. Isn't it fair to criticise a car if it turns out to be too wide? So we've come to a demanding road on purpose. What have we got? Well, I've got an interior which is stripped out over the regular 488 GTB. I've got no carpets. There's less soundproofing. I don't know if you can hear the sort of stones and stuff. And the engine has been amplified. Really picks up really well. Ferrari says you won't know that this is a turbocharged engine. I don't really believe that, but it is certainly quicker to respond than anybody else's super sports engine. I think the McLaren 4 litre is more boosty than this, and the more exploded 911 turbo engines, GT2 RS particularly as well, actually takes longer to work than this one does. And the gear shifts on the twin clutch box are superb. I mean, really superb. Paddles stay where you are because they're attached to the column and not the wheel, which is no bad thing because when you're on a road like this, it means they're where you left them. And the ride is really good. I've been in the stiffer of 2 damper modes, and I've just literally now popped it in the softer one. And the ride has gone from relatively compliant to really compliant, and the body control is really tight. Helps that this is not a heavy car, obviously. The steering is quick. Is it nervous? Just about manages not to be, I think. If it were any quicker than this, I think it's a real risk it could be too nervous, but as it is, it's fine. And Michelin have developed these new tyres, and they give this car a more keen turning. I think they've got stiffer sidewalls. They do some work to the compound on the outside of the tyre. That means there's a bit more load as you turn the wheel initially, and that helps give a bit more straight line stability, and it just helps the feel, if you like, the road feel on turning. It's not nervous, even though at 2 turns lock to lock it could be. But all of these things you can kind of measure against a 488 GTB. This is not a completely different car to a GTB. It feels like it's just taken all of the goodness and ramped it up by about 20% or so. Is that enough for a special series car? Because there's enough in here. If it were a bit more quiet. Interesting. Disguised Fandango prototype. Is that special enough? I mean, the Speciale felt really Speciale, inevitably. The Pista doesn't feel a million light years ahead of where the 488 already is. Now that could be because the 488 took such a leap forward over 458 when it came out that, you know, how do you keep improving cars by that massive yard and a half each time? Maybe sometimes you can only go half a metre or a few centimetres. However, this is brilliant because the 488 GTB was brilliant in the first place, still is brilliant now. This is probably just about enough different and enough better. But the thing is, it is trying to improve a car that is already utterly fantastic.